Good afternoon, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google+. This is Rich again, back for your second video blog of the day for Monday, July 4th, 2016, around 4:55 in the afternoon in Billerica, Massachusetts. It's sunny out, getting a little hot in the 80s and some 90s, but humidity's tolerable. Some news to report: Joey Chestnut won the Nathan hot dog eating contest in Coney Island. He ate 70 hot dogs in 10 minutes. That's a lot of hot dogs. I wonder if he vomited afterwards. I doubt it, but you never know. He must have a good appetite. Also, Kevin Durant has signed a 2-year contract with the Golden State Warriors. He's not coming to Boston, even though CBS Sports accidentally posted that Kevin Durant was coming to the Celtics. Also, the Dallas Mavericks are going to add Andrew Bogut and Harris Barnes to the team, and the New York Knicks have signed Brandon Jennings to a contract. And that's about it on the news. My second video blog subject of the day is about the NHL on CBS. The NHL was on CBS television back in the 50s and early 60s, and also from 1967 through 1972. This is how the background of the NHL on CBS started. It started on January 5th, 1957. The NHL and CBS signed an agreement to broadcast games in the 4 American cities at the time: Boston, Chicago, New York, and Detroit, and 5 out of the 6 teams played on the NHL on CBS. The Toronto Maple Leafs didn't, because they were contracted by the CBC to play Hockey Night in Canada, and calling the action was Bud Palmer and Fred Cusick, and the NHL on CBS just showed regular season games. They did not show any postseason games, no Stanley Cup, and this was for about 4 years, and the NHL was paying CBS $100,000 to carry their games, and they got decent ratings. In fact, the NHL on CBS were beating the ratings for the NBA on NBC back in the 50s, but they stopped doing it in 1960 because the NHL was afraid that if they added more games, they would have to give money to the Fledgling Players Association, which was forming at the time. And in 1963-1964, CBS offered the NHL a Game of the Week package to start on Saturday afternoons in November, and then they would go to Sundays during after the NFL season was over. But the NHL balked at that idea because it's scheduling conflicts. In 1966, the NHL signed a long-term contract with CBS Television, and this is the time when the NHL was expanding from 6 teams to 12 teams, including adding teams in Los Angeles and San Francisco. And part of the expansion agreement had teams placed in Los Angeles and San Francisco, plus they added St. Louis and Minnesota and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, and they were supposed to start the contract in 1967 season, but CBS had some conflicts during 1967, so they had to lease it to RKO General, which was a syndicated company, and they showed it throughout the United States. And in 1967, the NHL showed 13 regular season games of the NHL. Also, they showed select Stanley Cup playoff games, including some Stanley Cup Finals games. Calling the action was Jim Gordon and Stu Nathan. For the regular season and the playoffs, it was Dan Kelly. And they showed a lot of some great games during the NHL on CBS. They showed the 1970 Game 4 of the Stanley Cup Finals where Bobby Orr scored that goal in Game 4. They even had Pat Summerall and Ray Scott from the NFL do post-game interviews during that game. And the ratings were getting pretty decent. They even showed prime time Stanley Cup Finals games in 1971 between the Blackhawks and Canadians, and they drew pretty good. And even though some of the regular season games drew pretty good as well. In 1972, during a game between the Boston Bruins and Buffalo Sabres at Boston Garden, Dick Stockton actually called a game because Jim Gordon had some travel conflicts. And the NHL and CBS got decent ratings, but it wasn't big enough to keep it on CBS. The last game they televised while contracted to the NHL was Game 6 of the 1972 Stanley Cup Finals between the Bruins and the Rangers, which the Bruins won, and that was the last regular scheduled game that the NHL and CBS had. And in 1972-1973, CBS actually showed some WHA games from the World Hockey Association, which got no ratings, and they dropped it so they could add the NBA on CBS. And 3 times during the 70s and 80s, they showed some NHL games on CBS during the Sports Spectacular. In 1976, they showed the Russian national team facing off against the Buffalo Sabres. And in 1979, they showed Game 2 of the Challenger Series from Madison Square Garden between the Russian team and a group of NHL All-Stars. And the third game they showed on the Sports Spectacular was May 24th, 1980, Game 6 of the NHL Stanley Cup Finals between the Islanders and the Flyers, which was the only NHL game shown on network television in the 1980s, and it drew pretty good ratings. In the early 1980s, CBS Sports president at the time, Neil Pearson, was going to propose a deal with the NHL to show regionalized games during NASCAR, like part of the north part of the United States was going to show NHL games, while the southern part was going to have NASCAR racing, but the NHL declined that because they wanted full national coverage of the game, but many stations in the South refused to show NHL games. This happened prevalent in the 1960s and 70s, so that wasn't good. In 1994-1995, CBS proposed a bid to pick up NHL games for 5 seasons, but they were outbid by Fox. And they don't have too many NHL games on CBS saved, maybe some clips here and there. And it was a decent product. It was a decent presentation, but a lot of people back in the 60s and 70s didn't really watch hockey, especially in the southern United States. It was still regional. And that's about it on the NHL and CBS. And the third and final video blog of night's coming up tonight, and it's going to be about the late great game show host Bud Collier. Keep calm, everybody. I'm a Julie Pudding guy. Molly was blood. The WCCO accent has nice legs. Elizabeth Hart so stunning. She's the best. Amy Swansea so awesome, and she has nice legs. Linda Church of WPIX Channel 11 is awesome, and Bob Gives Up ABC 11 has that sweet southern accent. Don't forget Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Google+. Be careful around fireworks tonight. Let the professionals do it. If you don't know what you're doing with fireworks, don't try to do them because you could get severely hurt or it could lead to death. Have a good night.